The 16th of August 2025, Europe's electricity situation, real to education, not fake news. This is my fourth video today. Just as so much happening, it's very hard not to keep you up to date. Now, I want to just show you, my position on wind energy. It has crippled Europe. It has made the EU a laughingstock. They're talking about fighting a war and they don't even have ammunition and they don't even have steel. Now, Richard Tice, he's the Reform UK man, says both Labour and the Tories have let ideology cloud judgment to the detriment of taxpayers, and I'd say bill payers as well. And there's a picture here of Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary. Britain is today less energy secure than before. UK energy production has declined by 67% over the past 2 decades. That means that we have gone from a position of being a net exporter of energy, and this should be electricity. Don't allow electricity and energy to be confused. Creating jobs and tax in the country to importing around half of our energy. Last year marked a record low in UK energy production. Despite there being decades worth of oil and gas left in the country, the government dished out billions in subsidies to wind and solar developments. And it's very clear, if we're to give them any credit at all, that they think that they're going to replace it with wind and solar. How has this been allowed to happen? They never did the required assessment. The answer is simple. Policies from Labour and Conservative governments have been driven by ideological pursuit of net zero to the detriment of energy security and ordinary taxpayers. But they still voted for them, so why not do it? Policies like energy profit levy, also known as the windfall tax, have driven investors away from Britain and towards friendlier environments in the United States, Brazil and Norway. So if you opened an oil well somewhere, they taxed the daylights out of you till you wasn't worth bothering, so people just quit. Government policy over several decades has deterred the industry from investing in this country and so has widened the gap between our energy demand and production. Our natural gas dependency is 50%, and by 2030 it is forecast to be 70% or more. In other words, it produces only 50%, and so soon it'll be 30%, with 70% needed to import, and they won't let it be explored. UK oil production has declined by 42%, and our gas production is down 21% since 2019. Things are getting far worse. The bureaucrats in Whitehall have decided that it is preferable to shut down domestic production and rely on foreign imports. And that's the same in Ireland and all over Europe. Once it's not happening in the EU and Britain, it's all right. Out of sight, out of mind. Once the emissions go up in China, that's perfectly all right, as long as they don't go up in our own countries. So they shut down domestic production and rely on foreign imports, assuming that this will inspire other countries to take stronger action on climate. So if what he's saying is they shut down the coal, oil and gas exploration and they went in for a heap of windmills and they thought everyone else would follow them and we'd have a lovely economy with no coal, oil or gas at all. They thought everyone would follow them on what they call action on climate. Action on climate. Imagine that word, action on climate. Isn't that an oxymoron, if there ever was one? Would it make sense as a country for us to get rid of the British Army in the hope of inspiring world peace? A very good analogy. Would it make sense to get rid of the British Army and Navy and hope everyone would go for peace? Well, I don't think I'll insult your intelligence by asking you that. Now, Mr. Tice says it makes no sense not to utilise what we have. And Donald Trump told them that when he was over. The rest of the world isn't listening. They're not listening to UK politicians' moralistic crowing about decarbonisation either. From 1990 to 2024, the UK's emissions declined by 50%, while global emissions have increased by more than 60%. They're just making the products Britain should be making. We are now in a bizarre position where we shut down UK oil and gas fields and then import billions of pounds worth of liquefied shale gas from the United States. Trump made a right fool of them. Britain's oil and gas industry has been the beating heart of our national security for decades. You don't need to look far to find case studies demonstrating the perilous position that Ed Miliband and the Tories have put this vital sector in. You'd expect nothing else from the Labour Party, but the Tories really got screwed up. Now, so Harbour Energy has cut jobs. Apache has said it will quit the North Sea by 2030, and Chevron is heading for the door as well. So there's three big companies cleared enough, no more to do with it. A recent High Court judgment exemplifies the issue this country faces, where the policy and legal environment work against the UK's national interest. So I'd say what happened there was the court said you have to build more windmills. That's what they're at. The Griffin is a floating production vessel in the North Sea which processes 1% to 2% of oil production in the UK and up to 1% of UK gas production. The vessel was certified for safe production until the end of 2027, and the 5 fields which feed it have amounted to 9 million barrels of oil and gas remaining. The value of this oil and gas amounted to $300 million, or $200 million, or 221 million sterling, which it produced would have delivered 150 million in tax to Her Majesty's Customs and Revenue. The vessel employs hundreds of people and is key part of the energy security. The French-owned operator Total, with the blessing of oil and gas regulator, decided that they wanted to decommission the vessel despite there being millions of barrels of oil left. So they ordered it to be shut down. Shut it down. Get out of there. Nobel Upstream, one of the field's joint venture partners, took the regulation to court. And this week, the judge of the High Court concluded that the volume of oil and gas remaining was relatively modest. Who is he to decide? So here you have a judge telling you there wasn't much oil and gas there at all. They were going ahead for another few years, and that the regulator reflected the materiality of net zero in the decision making. So there's the courts backing up net zero. So how can you win when that happens? These fields will now be shut off permanently, leaving gas revenue opportunities for workers stranded under the sea. So they'll blast the holes and mean they can never be got out again. And aren't there some aegis? How many other fields which would generate 150 million in tax and secure 200 jobs are now at risk because of the High Court decision? A judge just knocks out 200 jobs just at the stroke of a pen. I hope that Nobel Upstream appeals the illogical High Court decision, but Reform UK response would be very simple. If oil or gas would be economically viable to extract, it will be extracted. If they get in, they'll put the judge running out the door and they'll put him out and take his pension off him. Reform UK has already met the British oil and gas firms to tell them to get applications ready for a Reform victory at the next election. So they are now told, get ready, Reform might win, and if they do, we're back forward drilling again. Drill, baby, drill. We will grant these applications on an urgent basis. So there you are. There's one piece. Now we're talking about wind. You know I say there's a limit on how much wind you can take into the grid. So there's a number of points to understand, folks. You cannot generate more electricity than there is a demand for. You cannot generate more electricity than there's a demand for. So the way they lie to us is to tell you, the grid's not fit to take it. Now, moreover, you cannot generate more renewable energy beyond the capacity to absorb it. And I say that is 66%. That's what several studies have showed. They tried to beat that in Spain and you had a blackout. When you go over 66%, you're on nerves because the whole thing could collapse. Because you have to have a certain amount of fossil fuel to maintain the grid frequency stable. That's accepted. They try to avoid saying it. It's an engineering fact. They don't want you to know. So anyway, why are they switching off wind farms and paying them? Because I'm right. They try to tell you if we invest more in the grid, we won't have to switch off the wind farms. But if you put your logic to it, even if it is the grid, you can't produce more than there is a demand for. And as they're shutting down demand, no industries, where is the demand going to come from? So we'll read, it says, all Scottish wind farms that shared £275 million sterling bonus for their energy bills for switching off. They got paid for switching off. Now, so we'll have a look at it. Scottish wind farm operators received a record sum of 275 million last year, switching off turbines and supplying no electricity to the grid. These constraint payments are necessary at times of high wind and low demand. There's the word demand. You'll not get the wind energy people talking about demand. Or when the grid doesn't have enough capacity with all the power that is being produced by the UK's tens of thousands of turbines, ultimately the cost is added to bills paid for by householders and businesses. Under the terms of the deal with the UK government, they just give them all they want. Energy firms are paid an agreed sum which varies from month to month, for all, as complicated as they can make it, for all electricity they could have supplied. The vast bulk of these constraints are paid to wind farms in Scotland due to the bottleneck in the grid taking power to consumers in England. Now they're along to mat it now. So why couldn't they use the power? It's the grid. It's the grid. So if that's the case, we have a grid in Ireland which is well spread out, and the wind farms are spread out, and we look at that now in a moment. Last year, a total value of constraint payments for energy firms in the UK was 307 million, the highest figure on record, up from 227 in 2022 to 143 in 2021 to 174 in 2020. So you can see there now again, in 2020 they got 274, in 2021 143, and in 2027 they got 227 for 2020 and 22. Now, 10 years previously, in 2013, it was just 33 million, and 3 years before that, it was 175,000. The reason is there's more and more wind farms being built, so there's a bigger amount of electricity that can't be used, and that's nothing to what they're intending to put in. The two biggest beneficiaries are Moray East and Seagreen offshore wind farms in the North Sea, which have come on stream in the past couple of years, but several Scottish onshore wind farms received bumper payouts in 2023, most notably Glyde and South Lancashire and South Lanarkshire with almost 17 million. So you see, they're raking it in. When they can't produce it, they get nothing except a one-off payment. When they can produce it, they get a guaranteed price if it can be used, and if it can't be used because it's no good, they get a big payout anyway, constraint payment. The 206 turbine wind farm near Beggar, straddling the M70 motorway, is operated by Perth-based SSE Renewables. The same firm operates Stranraer wind farm in the Mondelate Mountains near Loch Ness, which received 11.6 million in constraint payments in 2003. Other big wind farm operators on the list include the EDF Renewables, Scottish Power and Community Wind Power. Our table, compiled with the information published by the Renewable Energy Foundation, shows that most of the 84 Scottish wind farms received constraint payments last year are based on just a few council areas. There were 22 in the Highland, 14 in Dumfries and Galloway, and 11 in South Lanarkshire. Now, we leave that there. So you see there, it's here, it's given it here. I might be able to post it underneath. It shows you the amounts here. There's no point wasting time with it here. So we'll move on now to a report in Renewable Energy Foundation. Discarded wind energy increases by 91% in 2024. So as the amount of wind farms go up, they can't sell the electricity. And even if you leave over or forget about the 36% limit, they claim it's 75% limit. They claim they can let in 75%. I say it's 66%. But in between the two, you have a risk of blackouts. But even if you could use it all, they're still producing too much and they're still building more of it. Now, what other industry would you build more of something that's not wanted? You look at the pubs in Ireland, public houses are closing down because there's no demand. Would you open more pubs in that environment? Well, that's precisely what's happening. Now, it shows it here, the graph, how it's shooting up. It's just going up and up and up. Right? So it gives the list here. This gives a total of 367 million for. So what they're saying here is the industry and Ofgem, that's the regulator, are aware that this way that wind farm constraints are managed, that the way the wind farm constraints are managed is not in the consumer interest. But why are they doing it then? Because they don't care about the consumer. They're just looking after their own net zero nonsense that the government gives them promotions for. In November 2023, the then National Grid Electricity System Operator, now nationalised as National Electricity System Operator, to mitigate these costs, the proposed document noted that the true cost to consumers of wind farm constraints was not transparent and that the market was not efficient. It is transparent. I have quantified it totally. This is all the lie. Oh, we don't know. Oh, if we had a better grid, if somebody spent more payers' money, we wouldn't have this problem. So here's a report in the Daily Mirror at the 10th of December 2024. I know we're getting a bit long. Electricity grid constraints are limiting the amount of energy wind farms are allowed to produce. Grid constraints. And the fact that nobody wants electricity at all, it doesn't apply at all. Oh, it's the grid. Oh, spend a big bunch on the grid. It's like the way they try to spend money on beating Putin. Says Wind Energy Ireland. That's the union for the wind energy. And they're the ones that gets commenting. The ones that say that the scam can't get a word in at all. Yet, despite the setback, wind farms provided 32% of Ireland's electricity needs in the first 11 months of 2024. It's not a lot considering they have 4,000 megawatts. It's not a lot considering you're not counting the amount of electricity kept running. It's not a lot when you consider the amount of diesel engines and 56 lorry loads of diesel fuel a day to be there when these things that produce 36% suddenly stop and there's no power at all. That's not included in any of this. Wind Energy Ireland say wind farm remains the country's cheapest. Now, isn't that some dirty liar? They get the cost of the most expensive fossil fuel in the grid system. They get a guaranteed price. If the price of oil, coal and gas goes down, if the dearest, most expensive of them is below the guaranteed price, which is about 97 euros a megawatt hour, they get that. If the price of coal, oil and gas rises, they get the price of coal, oil and gas. And this fella comes along and says wind energy remains the country's biggest renewable energy source. Cheapest. Now, isn't it some country that you cannot make a complaint? I've complained about that several times and it was rubbished. That you can't complain that lie is being pushed out there in the media and nothing can be done about it. That wind remains the country's cheapest renewable energy resource. And it gets the price of the highest fossil fuel in the mix. And if the fuel prices drops to very low, supposing there's a war or there's a recession and there's nearly no coal, oil and gas is dirt cheap, they still get a guaranteed price. Isn't that a dirty lie? Isn't that a simple lie? But 14% of wind energy production was lost from January to October because of challenges within the network transmission. He doesn't say whether it was needed or not. There's no analysis on whether there was anyone to use this electricity. So isn't that some dirty story? I mean, you couldn't make it up. According to the industry group, this was partly because the electricity grid was not strong enough to carry it. Partly. What's the other partly? Because nobody wanted it. And when this happens, wind farms are told to reduce the amount of power they shut down or shut down completely. Well, why build them if you're going to shut them down? Resulting in the use of more expensive fossil fuels. Why would it be more expensive? If the fossil fuel is there to be produced and it's more expensive, why would you shut down the wind energy? Oh, it's the grid, it's the grid. He doesn't just say it's the grid only. He doesn't say, oh, you can't let any more than 65 or 6% of the wind energy into the grid. Doesn't say that at all. That's glossed over. There's no word of that at all. To read this, you'd think that you could take every bit of it. Isn't it unbelievable the lies that have been told? To create electricity instead of cheaper renewables when renewables are the most expensive form of all. So there you see now, folks, the carry on that's going on. And here's another report here in the Irish Times. Wind farms get paid for electricity they do not supply. And that's the latest renewable energy supports will risk cuts for generators to encourage lower prices. I don't know what that's about. I don't know what they're on about there. We'll just read it. It's by Barry O'Halloran on Friday the 14th of April 2023. It's 2 years old. Wind farms will be paid for electricity they cannot supply under the terms of the government's latest renewable energy aid scheme. It's emerged. Eamon Ryan, Minister for the Environment, Climate and Communications, this week announced details of the third onshore wind renewable energy support scheme, designed to attract wind farms capable of generating up to 3,500 megawatts of electricity in total. That's a lie. It's 4,000. They're all on the cusp of 4,000 for many years. A new term included in the RESS support scheme 3 will compensate wind farms when the system curtails or prevents them from supplying some of their available electricity. So there you have it. It doesn't matter whether we can take it off. You get paid anyway. A Department of the Environment Climate Communications spokesman confirmed that wind farms given contracts under the RESS 3 will be compensated for electricity they are unable to supply for reasons of curtailment or oversupply. According to the industry body Wind Energy Ireland, this happens most often when there is more wind-generated electricity than the national grid can manage. No, not in Ireland. There might be a little thing to that in Scotland. In Ireland, the national grid can manage it all. There's no one wants it. You're producing it over in Donegal. The people of Donegal cannot use it. You want to get that down to Wexford. So you need thousands of tons of copper and steel. There never was a problem like this before. Currently, the grid can handle a maximum of 75% wind power. That's a lie. It's 66 at most. If you go beyond that, you run the risk of blackouts, of a cascade or a blackout, because the frequency becomes unstable. While Irish wind farms have the capacity to supply up to 90% of total electricity needs. Well, if they have the capacity to supply 90% of Ireland's needs, how can they then have to switch it off when there's too much? Why don't they supply 90%? They can't do it because you'll have a collapse. The grid will collapse. So here is the Irish Times lying as usual. Lying about this. Barefaced lie. And there's nothing the citizen can do about it. Consequently, there are times when grid operator EirGrid automatically limits output from all wind farms, which in turn cuts the revenue they earn. Why would EirGrid want to limit the power? Surely if EirGrid was honest, they'd be saying this when they're talking about wind energy. Instead of that, oh, it's great. Oh, it's what? It'll bring down the cost of electricity. They just lie. They're pathological liars, which in turn cuts the revenue they earn. This is a wind energy spokesman said. Well, it's EirGrid's lie that's the most serious. Wind Energy Ireland are the seller. They're selling the product, like me selling an animal. You praise it a bit. So they're not as culpable as the government's agents that back them up and tells the lies, and EirGrid telling the lie. They're the ones who have control of this. Wind farms will be compensated at the strike price. That's whatever price it's on the day. So they're going to get the full business, not a reduced thing. Up to now, they used to get a reduced payment, which takes into account fuel and running costs. Why would fuel be taken into account in judging the cost of shutting down wind farms? I thought the whole idea was that they weren't relying on fuel prices. That applies at the time that their electricity supplies are limited. The department spokesman said the measure was aimed at limiting generators' risk for potential losses when the supplies were curtailed, give them all the money they asked for, and let the consumer go to hell. And the amount of bill payers in arrears has gone up from 25% to by 90,000 in the last month, and that's in the summertime. Do not take smart meters and do not allow coin machines because they can't cut off everybody. The de-risking should translate into lower auction bills. No, it wouldn't. How would the de-risking translate into lower auction bids? You give them more money and they're going to bid less. Huh? Though the removal of risk premia, through the removal of risk premia and in turn lower costs to the consumers. That's an unbelievable lie. This de-risking should translate into lower auction bids. Why should it? Why isn't it constantly going up? Why they're trying to say that if they give them plenty of money for turning off, they'll bid less when they're turning on. What a screwball crowd. Through the removal of risk premium. Well, where's the removal? The constraint payment is a risk premium. It's a payment to compensate you for not being able to sell your product. And in turn, lowers costs to consumers. WEF have argued that this measure in the past they argued for it, Wind Energy Association, and they got everything they asked for of Eamon Cabbagehead Ryan. It maintains that wind farm operators add potential cost of contained supplies to their prices when they bid for supply contracts through RSS. No, it doesn't, because they have to take it. Priority dispatch means that every piece of wind energy has to be taken onto the grid in preference to any other type, even though you have to leave the plant already running there. You still have to let in the wind energy. They must get it. And when that can't be done, when it's impossible to let them do that, they pay them anyway, driving up the eventual cost of electricity. That is the most convoluted, stupid. He argued, it maintains that wind farms operators add potential cost of constraint payments to their prices when they bid for supply contracts through the RES system, driving up eventual cost of electricity. I mean, how would you make common sense of that? I understand this system backways. This is all media lies. Its spokesman said it is likely that electricity market operators would cut the maximum bid allowed to supply contracts under this. So they'll bid less. Why would they bid less when they're guaranteed the price they're going to get? They can bid in and say, we'll supply at the market price. We're ready to supply. And then if they can't supply, if there's no wind, they can't supply it. If there is too much wind, they get paid a premium for not supplying it at all. And they're trying to tell us this will make them lower the price. Why is the price going up so and has gone up for years? Previous rounds have capped bids at 120 per megawatt hour. Right? It said the measures would result in lower bids for contracts in RES3. The price set by the last such auction in May last year was 97.87. That's the price they get for the product. That's the full price if it's used. That was the maximum of any auction in Europe. Ireland paid the most in Europe. Why? Because the government hates its people and the people vote for them anyway. Now, in fairness, the people put Ryan out and his dirty party, but they still put in Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin. So it says here that was the highest auction in Europe. So load it down on the Irish bill payer and let them go to hell. Let them starve and freeze. That's the idea of your government, and they'll still vote. And if they don't vote, we'll get independence and they'll back us up. The highest in Europe, Ryan gave them. And the government that's in now agreed. And so the independent TDs never questioned it. Its spokesman said, adding that this was because wind farm operators priced in likely curtailment losses and other risks when they bid. a heap of mumbo jumbo. This, everyone knows that the ordinary person hasn't a clue what this is about, but I do. I can see your little scheme. I was a detective sergeant investigating Ponzi schemes and frauds, and I can see one here. It's sticking out a mile. Including compensation for curtailment would also encourage EirGrid to develop the grid and take more wind, spend more of your money, pull more of your money out, money that can't build a children's hospital, and this is what they're at. As this would limit likely payments from the scheme, he argued. What a mungo jumbo. RES auctions are meant to favour the cheapest generators. That's a lie. RES auctions get a guaranteed price, not the cheapest generators. The cheapest generators are coal, oil and gas, and they do not have to fall. If that price falls, the renewables get the big price, get the guaranteed price. And if the price goes up, the renewables get the most expensive fuel in the mix. So here is the liars being cheapest generator by offering contracts to wind farms, offering them lower prices for the electricity. They're not, that's a lie. They increased the prices, they didn't lower them. As the auction sets the price, they will receive generating factors in inflation. Now they're introducing inflation. Confuse the bill payer more. Curtailment. So these are factors. Curtailment and other risks when calculating their bids. They will, in my eye. Oh, the dirty, rotten liars. Previous RES rounds did not include compensation for curtailment. They were paid it. Because I know it, I was checking on that for years. The exact way they paid them, I think it was a lump sum. They were paid it. That's another lie. So the Irish Times is at least giving me something to make a programme on, but it's all lies. We have, it's said that they've given them the highest electricity prices in Europe for the wholesale product. And we have over 25% of the people who can't pay their bill. I think we should only pay half our bill. That's what the bill should be, half it. Let them go to hell. Can they disconnect everybody? That's what is happening. It is so absolutely false. It's a pure and utter pyramid selling scheme and nothing else. We'll see you back, folks. Thank you very much. Sorry for the slightly long video, but I need to show this madness is going. And Reform UK is doing well. If they can hold their act now, they'll be in power and they'll dump the whole windmills out. Pull them out and dump them out somewhere. You can't actually dump them either. I don't know what they'll do with them. But anyway, there you are. So they're on for building more here. Getting rid of the Greens didn't save us at all. Sinn Féin's the most enthusiastic wind farm party in the country. Wait till they get in. They'll go to town altogether, building them. And out in the North Sea, they'll put them all around the coast. Billions and billions. Totally nuts. Good luck. Thank you. Comment underneath.